Hi there, I'm Tina Srabotniak. I'm the acting head of programming here at the Appel Salon. It is such a pleasure tonight to welcome you to our 10th annual June Callwood Lecture, which is being delivered by Clara Hughes, and you saw her come in. I'll just say a few words about June Callwood, obviously after whom this lecture is named. I'm sure many of you may have known her personally. Certainly all of you would have known of her. She lived such a large life, and she was such a committed social activist, especially around issues affecting women and children. She founded or co-founded 50 social action organizations, including Casey House, a hospice for people with AIDS, and Jessie's, which is now called Jessie's, the June Callwood Centre for Young Women, in her honor. She was also active in PEN Canada, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and Feminists Against Censorship. Her motto was, whenever she saw an injustice, she was asked many times during the course of her life, you know, why do you feel compelled to act? And her simple answer to that was, I saw there was a problem, which is such a wonderful, obviously simple truth, but she just felt that as a member of a society that she wanted to be about kindness, that the thing to do was to step up. And so that line of hers, I saw there was a problem, became a tagline for this series of lectures, which is now in its 10th year. The lectures are partially funded by the Toronto Public Library Foundation's June Callwood Endowment Fund, and you might have seen some flyers on your seats, and there are more at the back. If you feel able to answer June's call to action with a donation, it would be much appreciated. These donations tonight are also being split between the June Callwood Endowment Fund and Jessie's, and that's at the request of Clara Hughes, because Jessie's is also very close to her heart, as it was to June's. So we'll get to our speaker tonight. Clara Hughes has made the best of the Canadian climate by taking up, two sports, one in summer, one in winter, cycling and skating, like many of us. Well, actually, like none of us, because, of course, she won 6 medals. Doesn't it make you tired just saying that? 6 medals in both the Winter and Summer Olympic Games. I mean, really, she's a paragon. And just as amazing as her athletic prowess, I think, is the size of her compassion. And just before I bring her up, I'm going to show you a video that I think will show you what I mean.
Remarkable, incomparable, Canadian Olympic legend. The race may be done, the story may not be done at all.
Clara Hughes has continued to write that remarkable story. After Clara's unprecedented achievement of winning multiple medals at both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games, she was awarded the medal as an Officer of the Order of Canada.
I really feel like this is just the beginning, and as long as I live, I hope to be able to reach out and share the experiences I've had as an athlete, as a Canadian, traveling this globe and representing the country.
This commitment led her to join Bell's mental health initiative, Let's Talk Day, as a national spokesperson for the cause.
I hope I can stimulate dialogue and conversation about this, and maybe I can give people the courage to talk about it themselves.
Clara's Big Ride, her cross-country bike trip, was a continuation of that effort to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness.
The dream of a stigma-free Canada is alive. It is achievable. We can do it together. Thank you, Canada!
But her commitment doesn't end there. As a Right to Play athlete ambassador and international board member, Clara is dedicated to raising awareness and funds for Right to Play so that its programs can continue to make a difference in the lives of children and communities worldwide.
We're in a refugee camp here in a settlement, and these kids obviously have so little, but they're engaged in play, they're learning, and they're filled with joy, and I'm sharing it with them today, and it's like really emotional, but it's so beautiful.
Clara's involvement in Right to Play shows her true passion for giving back through sport.
Did we have fun playing today? Yeah.
Her story is one of dedication, inspiration, and success. Through her ongoing support of Right to Play, she continues to write another chapter.
Right to Play is so much more than just playing games, and that's what I want to go back to Canada and share. And it's absolutely changing the world, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Oh, I get tears in my eyes when I see those children playing. Every single time. I've seen that video so many times. It touches your heart, doesn't it? Thank you all for coming tonight. I was a little nervous. I'm like, Toronto's a big city. Is anyone going to show up? There's a Raptors game going on in Cleveland. So thank you for showing up. And I can't begin without acknowledging and honoring the great June Callwood. The late and the great June Callwood, who will never be forgotten, whose influence will, I hope, live on through many, many generations of Canadians. And tonight, as Tina mentioned, half of any donations that happen will go to Jesse's. And I'm donating the entire honorarium that I'm to receive to Jesse's as well, in the spirit of June and in remembering her. And in the spirit of always giving back when you can. Also the book, I'll be there signing books, but if you don't want to buy a book or can't buy a book, just come and say hi. This is not about selling books. And in fact, the book that I did, Open Heart, Open Mind, was not about how many books were sold. It was just about sharing the struggle and sharing the joy and connecting as human beings. And the entire proceeds from my part are going to charity. They've gone to Right to Play. They've gone to Take a Hike. They've gone to a beautiful marionette program in northern Quebec that works with people in the community that live with mental health issues and teaches them the art of puppeteering and puppet making. It's gone to many different Canadian mental health associations. So that book is also a charitable initiative. Thank you for anybody who has supported, but you don't have to come and say hi. So here I am, and here we are, and we're here together. And we're here, I hope, to connect. And I've learned so many lessons over these decades. I had a chance to represent Canada for like 23 years over the span, over 6 different Olympics, 6 different games, 6 different medals, a gold, a silver, and 4 bronze in 2 different sports in 2 different seasons. Like on the bike, on the ice, and now I'm just this recreational athlete that tries to get out for a run on the waterfront when I'm in Toronto or the Lower Don Trail. But over half of my life was spent pursuing those Olympic ideals, pursuing excellence. And that idea of excellence was something that consistently shifted throughout those decades I had in sport. As a young athlete, I thought I knew what excellence meant. I thought it meant winning. I thought it meant having a medal hung around my neck, and you know what? I know a lot of jerks that have won many gold medals. That is not excellence at the human level. So I'm here to share some of those stories, but I'm also here to talk from the perspective of a different statistic. And that statistic is the 1 in 5. The 1 in 5 Canadians every year that go through a form and live through and try to survive through a form of mental illness. I am the one. I'm a small fraction of the one because I've gone through major depression in my lifetime. I'm also here representing the 4 in 5. The 4 that are connected to the 1 that is struggling, that is suffering, that is sick, that you don't always know what to do or what to say or how to help or how to get them help. I am that 4. I'm one of those 4 because my sister has lived with bipolar disorder for over 20 years with major depression and anxiety and drug addiction. And my dad lived with alcoholism much of his life and undiagnosed mental illness. And my mom, I can say, lives with a pretty heavy dose of PTSD after many decades with my dad and that trauma. So I am that 4. This is not only close to home, it is my home. And you know what? It is all of our homes to a certain degree because the 5 out of 5 of all of us care about mental wellness. We just don't talk about it enough. We assume it with the things that we have,
the successes we have, the status we have, the money, the house, the cars, the schooling, that's what we equate, this idea of happiness that some people equate with mental wellness. I learned over 2 decades in sport that happiness has little to do with what you have. It is who you are inside. It is who you allow yourself to accept yourself to be and how you accept others. The bliss of connecting through struggle is something that I've learned over the last 6 years, and it has left me with the truth that we connect at the very, very deepest level through struggle as human beings, and it's a beautiful connection. So I hope after tonight we've all made a connection at the end of this short talk, happy talk on depression and sport, and everything in between. But like I said, for me, it has been a lot of struggle. And this struggle started from birth. I was born into it. I was born into dysfunction, into a pretty messed up family. My dad lived with the failure of his reality of not achieving his PhD. He was a university professor and a damn good one at that, but he didn't have that status that he had chased after for so many years, and in the end it was denied him. So he was at war with the world. And that war with the world that he had was numbed and was fueled by alcohol. I remember the first time realizing something was wrong in my family when I was 5 years old. 5 years old, and one night I decided that everything was going to be okay, and I was going to make it okay because I was going to sit in this closet near the kitchen and I was going to wish. And I was going to wish that my family was going to be okay. I was going to wish that my dad was going to come home and he wasn't going to be so drunk and he wasn't going to scream at my mom, and we were going to be this happy family together. And because I was 5 years old, I believed I could make it happen. So I hid in this closet. And because my dad came home so late that night, I fell asleep in the mitts and the hats and the scarves and the coats. And I fell asleep. And what I woke up to was not my dream. It was the everyday nightmare of our household. And that was my dad screaming at my mom and drunk, and nothing was right and everything was wrong and it was all her fault. And I sat there as that kid, as that 5-year-old kid in that closet, feeling for the first time in my life like a complete and utter failure. Worthless, hopeless, helpless, responsible. I carried those deep-seated emotions, those deep-rooted emotions, and I carry them for the rest of my life. They have moved with me. That little 5-year-old girl has moved with me through every skate, every stride that I've skated, every pedal stroke on my bike, every step that I've walked. Come to know her over the decades, but I will never forget being that 5-year-old kid who felt like it was all her fault. When I was 9 and my sister was 11, my big sister, who is tough, who is stronger than me, who is actually physically far more capable than me, and I have those 6 Olympic medals. And when I think about those medals, I think about my big sister. And I think about how if her path had gone differently, if something had happened to pull her off the path to destruction that she and I were both on, she could have done so much more in sport than me, because she's stronger, because she has a focus, and because she is as tough as nails. But our paths went different ways. When I was 9 and she was 11, and our parents split up because soon after she started hitting the streets and never got off. Drugs, drinking, smoking, truancy, stealing, all of those things. My big sister was the toughest kid, not just on the block, but in our school, and we went to the crappiest school in Winnipeg, Manitoba. When I go home and people are like, "You went to Elmwood? How did you get out of there?" That's where I went, and that was our hood. And my dad lived in the North End, which many of you probably read about in Maclean's magazine when it was spoken about Winnipeg being the most racist city in Canada when it comes to Indigenous people. That's the part of town I grew up in. I also grew up in this amazing artistic environment with Indigenous artists, with storytelling, with theater. So I grew up being so exposed and so inspired and intrigued by Indigenous culture and tradition. It's always been a part of me. But my sister went on that path, and like I said, she never got off it. When she was 13, she was taken away by the police because of the drugs. Not just because of the drugs, but because of the abuse. And I remember shortly before that, having a piece of paper like this and listening to who had become the abuser in our household, and that was my sister. Yelling and screaming at the top of her lungs every curse word at my mom, and I filled both sides of this sheet with her words. My sister ended up in juvenile lockup and group homes, on the streets with my dad, in and out of everywhere. And she's never really been able to come back, but I'm proud of her because she does the best that she can with what she has. She's a mom, she's an amazing woman, but she never got off that path. For me, after my sister left, I gave up on being that good kid because it wasn't working either. Everything was still wrong around me. My mom had gone back to work, learned how to drive at 45 years old to look after her girls, to provide for her household. She did her best to take care of us, but she was at her wit's end because of the life that she had endured with my dad for decades, not being able to stand up for herself, to get away. She was traumatized. But as a kid, you don't know that. You don't see your parents as human beings. You don't see them as people with emotions and with struggles. And I blamed my mom and started to blame her for everything as well. And after my sister left, like I said, I gave up on being good and trying to fix everything. And I followed in her footsteps. Drinking, drugs, smoking, truancy, stealing. This 6-time Olympic medalist did all of those things, and I did them really, really well. I took pride in the leadership that I had on the streets, and the leadership I showed in sport and in other areas, it's always been inside of me. And the funny thing is it was just channeled into the most delinquent places when I was young, because I didn't know any other way. So when you see a kid that's messed up, don't give up on them. Get them on the ice. Get them on the bike. Make them do sports or music or arts or dance or poetry. Try to give them an outlet, because that is what happened to me when I was 16 years old and everything was going so wrong, and I was leading that crew downtown and drinking my face off in stairwells and passing out under street lamps and smoking a pack a day and not going to school. What happened to me was the Olympics. And it was Gaëtan Boucher who entered my world. He entered my world through the television in my mom's house. And I was sitting there that afternoon in February 1988, and I'll never forget it because I was bored out of my skull. I was sitting there planning what party I was going to go to, flipping through the channels, all cool, audacious, thinking, whose booze are we going to steal out of whose parents' liquor cabinet tonight? And where are we going to drink it? I had my pack of smokes in my pocket, and I was ready to party, ready to roll. I just had to pass a few hours before my friend was picking me up. So I flipped through those channels, and I came across this thing that rocked my world. And that thing was long track speed skating, the most boring Olympic sport. Like, seriously, it wasn't even short track. You skate in circles and you turn left and you change lanes. Like, ooh, you might have a crossover problem. Wow. That's what totally enthralled me and absorbed me. And I learned about Gaëtan, and there were these gorgeous guys in head-to-toe lycra skating around, and you could see all their muscles, if you know what I mean. I was just like, whoa, these guys are kind of good looking. And then I learned of Gaëtan, and that he had won so many medals for Canada, and that he was this great competitor, that he had this fire in his eyes, and he unleashed this power in his races. And he looked so much smaller than everybody else. But the commentators were like, but he's won these medals, but he has no chance here. He already had his best race, and it's just nice he gets to skate one last time in Canada, because they said he wasn't at his best. They said he was sick, he had been injured, maybe too old. I think he was like 23 at the time. Oh, how times have changed. I just quit sport at 39, 4 years ago, and I just gave away my age. Oh well. But what Gaëtan did is he didn't listen to what everyone was saying. He didn't listen to what wasn't possible. He actually set out on that race, and when that gun went off, he became larger than life. And that fire in his eyes was contagious. Gaetan went off on world record place in the 1,500 meter race, and he held it until one lap to go. And then he got to the back stretch, and his legs seized up, and he grabbed his quads, and he stood up, and his coach was yelling at him. And by that time, being this person who did not know anything about long track speed skating, I was at the edge of my seat screaming, "Go Gaetan! Go Gaetan! Come on, you gotta skate, man! I don't know anything about this, but get down and skate!" And Gaetan finished finally, and he finished in 9th. He was top 10 in the Olympics. And I remember watching him skate around and go to the infield, go to the bench, sit down and put his head in his hands. And I remember thinking, he looks like he thinks he failed. And to me, it was the most awesome thing I had ever seen in my life, because I had never witnessed someone caring so much about what they did, that they were willing to put themselves through that kind of physical agony and pain. He almost collapsed. He was in so much pain. And I know that feeling now. I know what it's like to go out way too hard in a speed skating race. It hurts your eyeballs. It hurts every cell in your body, but he cared so much. And I was connected to that beautiful movement that was like a dance on ice, that was like poetry in motion. And when I saw it, I felt like that is the way that I speak. I know that language. The one consistent thing that stayed with me through those troubled, confused years of adolescence was sport. And I'm not talking about Olympic sport, all you parents out there. I'm talking about community sport, Calvin Community Center, outdoor ringette and hockey and high school volleyball. We just didn't even have a football team at our school. And I didn't have drives to practice. I relied on coaches and parents. It was not high-level sport. The whole ringette team smoked regularly. But that thread of something good and team and unity and physicality, I think, was what kept me off that edge that I was teetering on. My sister stopped sport. I don't know what would have happened if she had continued after 10 or 11 years old, but I certainly know that it was what kept me going and what allowed me to know how to skate when my dreams started. I got on the provincial team pretty fast. I got a pair of rental skates and I was clutching the boards, thinking I was going to be easy, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard. They make it look so easy. And then I got my own used skates that my grandma bought me for Christmas. And then I got on those and I'm like, it's going to be so much easier. And it was so much harder, because the more you train, the better you get and the harder it is to improve. And I was with suddenly all of these individuals who cared so much about skating in circles fast and remembering to change lanes and doing everything good. And how I got involved was my mom saw I was interested in something, and being a mom who would do anything for her kids, she found a way to get me involved, and especially because it was something legal. Anything legal. Maureen Hughes saw me, or even my sister, and she still tries. Anything we show interest in, let me see how I can get you involved, dear. So I ended up with the team, and then less than a year and a half, I was recruited into cycling. I was recruited, and I was told that one day I'd wear the yellow jersey and the Tour de France and the rainbow jersey, and I was like, Tour de France, right? Someone in my school did a bus tour of France, and their family ate croissant. They came back 10 pounds heavier. And the yellow with like red hair, nah. I didn't know what bike racing was, but I found out fast, and I was recruited for the Western Canada Games. A group of misfit athletes from all different sports were recruited, and we won almost every gold medal in the Western Canada Games, my first home games experience in Winnipeg. And from there, a team gave me a bike. Rob and Tracy Jones from Paris, Ontario, the pedal cycling team, sent me a bike. Someone gave me a bike and a helmet and jerseys and plane tickets. In my mind, I was totally pro. I made no money. And even when I won money, it was split amongst many teammates. But I was a professional. And I was going to live this dream and hang up those blades for a couple of years. So you think everything's good, right? Because this sporting thing, this Olympic dream got me off drugs and drinking and smoking, got me back in school because I had a chance to go to Regina for a speed skating meet and I knew I had to at least attend school. So I turned F's and T's into A+s because going to Regina for this kid who had never gone further than Winnipeg Beach was like going to the moon. I had all these carrots dangling and I had to be good at everything to have the privilege of representing. That's what sport taught me. You work for what you get. So you think it's great. I'm winning Western Canada Games, National Championships, Commonwealth Games, Pan American Games medals, World Championship medal. But what was happening inside, and every time I went home this was reinforced, was that there was this crack that was beginning to just break right in half, and it was deep inside of me. And who was living behind that was that little 5-year-old girl. That every time I won something, every time, at first it was happiness and it was like, wow, pride, yeah, arms up, medal around neck. But as soon as I went home, the words turned to not fast enough, not good enough, failure, worthless, hopeless, helpless. These were my words to myself. That 5-year-old kid was screaming out at me, I'm still here. You're still that nothing. I was winning at the highest international levels. And what happened was I turned into this addict, this person that was chasing this ultimate high. And that ultimate high was coming from victories, was coming from hardware around my neck, was coming from recognition. And I thought the higher the level of all of this, I'm gonna feel good about myself. And these feelings inside, they're gonna change. And every time I went home after winning another race, my dad would tell me to leave and don't come back. This place is gonna drag you down and it's gonna eat you alive. I would see my sister in another emergency ward after another attempt on her life. I would see her unable to talk because of her struggles with her mental health. And I didn't know what was going on. I would see my mom who would just try to make everything okay. And I would go home and my family would pretend to be a family and my dad would end up being drunk and screaming at my mom and slamming the door, and they'd have been divorced for over 15 years. So I would leave and I would go and try to win another race. I had one last chance to make it, right? And that was the Olympics. And my first Olympics was 20 years ago this summer. 20 years ago. I feel so young, but now I know I'm not. And it was Atlanta. I made those games. I earned the chance to represent Canada on this ultimate stage, but I was also on a mission to get that thing that was gonna complete me inside and was gonna kind of sew that crack back together and bury that little girl so I couldn't hear her voice anymore, to change that inner dialogue pattern that was going on and was so vicious and violent to myself, to the point that if I spoke to any friend the way I spoke to myself in those years, I would not have a single person around me because people wouldn't put up with that. But I did it to myself. So I made those games, and I also, over those years and pursuing it, one of the other things that I did to myself was gain an eating disorder. I was in a sport where you go uphill, and I'm a big, strong girl, and I still am. I was in a sport like speed skating where I was told, you're so strong, look at your muscles, you're perfect for this sport. And then I became a road cyclist. And I remember winning a silver medal at the World Championships in 1995 in Colombia and feeling pretty good about myself until a French coach came up to me and said, you'd be so much better if you lost 5 kilos. And I was 20 pounds lighter than I am right now. That was the sport I was in. Pretty vicious. And it just fed what I was feeding myself. The doses of inner dialogue that were toxic.
So I went to my first Olympics with a massive eating disorder, and I was on a mission to win some Olympic medals to make everything okay, to make everything good, and finally figure this whole thing out inside and then just leave it behind and then go win more races. I stood on the starting line the first time and ended up with the bronze medal in Atlanta, the first medal of the games. I did the road race. It was raining. There was wind. There was crashes. I was in the breakaway forever and ended up in third. I remember crossing the line and going, oh my God, it actually happened, and this is the Olympics. I remember feeling larger than life that day. I remember feeling what I saw in Gaetan. I remember feeling I not only was representing Canada, I was Canada. I remember feeling like I had millions of people inside of me, willing me forward, giving me strength, and just wanting me to be darn good on that bike that day. And it ended up being a bronze medal. I got my medal at the venue. A Russian won, a French woman came second, and a Canadian came third. First medal in women's road cycling in history, and only. Hopefully that'll change in Rio. But I remember just having it and holding it and thinking, this is it, and it was heavy. And then I became a Winter Olympian, and then you realize how heavy medals really can be. Those things are substantial, but at that time I had never seen anything so big and so bold, and it was around my neck, and it almost looked gold if I looked at it right in the light. And I was dragged to the International Broadcast Center, and I did all these interviews and spoke to Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and talked about the medal, talked about the race, sat there very hungry, but very happy and elated and joyful and joyous and complete, because I had that thing. And then I went to the last interview, and it was with Brian Williams with CBC. And it was the big interview on national news. And when I went into the studio, Brian Williams came up to me so excited. Clara! My first thought, oh my God, he knows my name. Brian Williams knows my name. Holy crap, this Olympics thing is big. You'll never guess what we've done. We've got your mother and your father live, via satellite, from the studio in Winnipeg. We've got them together. We've got you here. We're going to show Canada what family support is, what a real family is. And I looked at him and he was so excited. So I didn't want to burst his bubble, and quite frankly, I didn't know what the heck to say. And I had that medal, and I just said, that's great, Brian. And I remember looking at it and just thinking, you're still worthless, and you're still nothing. And how are you going to get through this? How are you going to hide this one? I did that interview, and I saw it recently, and man, I was a scared 5-year-old little kid sitting there looking at that medal every time my dad spoke. Thankfully, the interview went okay. My dad hadn't been drinking too much that day, and he didn't belittle my mom. My mom was okay. But I walked out of that studio feeling like nothing. I put that Olympic medal away, and I trained my brains out, ate, slept, and trained, and watched the Olympics for the next 11 days, and raced again in the time trial and won another bronze medal, Canada's last of that games. I went home to Hamilton, Ontario, where I trained and trained and trained. Went back home, and people would honk their horns when they saw my red hair out of my helmet. I'd go to Tim Hortons, and people would buy me my double-double, and people knew my name, and they'd be like, I saw that guy running beside you on the hill with the flag. That was awesome. They would tell me their Olympic moments, and I'm like, wow, this means a lot to everyone. I couldn't look at those medals. I took them out for events, and I hid them away after, because what was going on inside was so terrifying. I started partying again, drinking drugs, started smoking again, and I was still racing. Within months, by that winter, I had gone from being on top of the sporting world, being a lean, mean, fighting machine, to gaining another way of numbing the pain, and that was eating. I would eat and eat and eat. I would eat, I would sleep, I would cry, I would try to train. I put on 30 to 40 pounds by December. I was so ashamed of myself. I was so terrified. I thought, if I asked anyone for any help with, I don't know what this is, I'm going to be like my sister. I'm going to be like my dad. And it's the end of the world. I couldn't admit
to myself or anyone that I was sick because I was terrified, and because nobody talked about this, and because I was the one who had to be strong, and because I was the one who had to go and save the world and be good and be the shining light and not have any weakness. I was an Olympian and a medalist at that, and you do not show weakness, you only exude strength. I had to go to a national team training camp that winter, and I got really lucky because the national team doctor took me aside for my routine physical and did not check my blood pressure. She looked at me and she said, "What is going on? What is going on? This is what I see." She talked to me about depression. We talked about my family. I talked to her just about everything, and then I cried and I cried and I cried as I had been crying for months. And she talked to me not just about what she saw, but about what depression was, and that there's medication, and there's therapy, and there's all sorts of ways of managing this illness. And it is not the end of the world. You're sick. And you need to not train the way you've been training. That is not sustainable. Nobody can do that. She gave me the gift of support, and I walked out of her office thinking, "You're not going to tell me what's wrong with me. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go on a diet, and I'm going to win races." That's what I thought would make everything okay. I couldn't do that. Felt like more of a failure. And for the next 2 years, I struggled deeply. But I also got lucky in that time of denial, that span of denial, in that I met the most amazing guy. I met this American from Oregon who has Mexican parents. His name is Peter Guzman. This guy I met 20 years ago this September is my husband. He is Mr. Survivor Man without the show. We met randomly on a ranch in Oregon, and he is this adventurer when I didn't know there was such a thing as adventurers. He kind of mentioned that he'd done these walks, like the Pacific Crest Trail, and I was like the West Coast Trail? He's like, no, like Mexico to Canada. I was like, there's a trail? He's like, yeah, I walked it. And then there's this thing called the Continental Divide where there isn't the trail, but he walked that too, alone. And then he told me about all these bike tours, and I was like, well, dude, like, I'm a racing cyclist. Like, I don't wear Tilly hats. I don't do steel frames and forks and panniers. No. Yeah, no, that sounds like fun, but sleeping in a tent? So I met this guy who liked me enough and loves me enough to stick by me. And through those 2 years of denial, what he kept trying to do is convince me to go on a bike tour. 2 years out of the beginning of this struggle, I decided to quit sport because I thought it was sport doing it to me, and it wasn't. It was me. I was the one constant. And it was me not dealing with my health and my mental health. And I left sport and I thought I was going to get better and lead a normal life and paint houses for a living. And I was totally cool with that. Because then I could become Peter and be adventure woman, survivor woman without the show. And life would be good and simple and just blissful and happy. Anyway, that didn't happen. But what did happen is I took his invitation to go on a bike tour. And we went down to Baja California, Mexico. And we traveled and traversed that peninsula, the desert peninsula, and slept on the desert floor in the cactus jungle, under the stars many times. We didn't even have a tent with us. We had a tarp. We didn't have a cook stove. We cooked over a fire. When we wanted coffee, we stopped and built a fire and made our coffee. We would meet ranchers in the middle of nowhere in the most parched areas who would walk up to us as we approached their little huerta, and they would say, "Welcome, mi casa es su casa." They would bring us to their well and to their basin of water with their family cup hanging on the side and dip it in and say, "Have some of our sweet, beautiful water. It's our survival." They shared with us what they had, and they showed me this beautiful humanity that I had been so blinded to because I was so blinded by trying to win medals. I started realizing I had seen this humanity all around in Colombia, meeting a community where Canadians had made a difference and donated money and gotten the village back on their feet, and they had the Canadian team up there to say thank you to Canada. And all I did up there was think about, okay, I have to train tomorrow, I don't want to be home too late. Instead of seeing this beautiful human connection of what happens when you give back, when you support others. Being in places like France and Holland and Belgium, having people come up and say, "You're from Canada. Thank you. Let me tell you what Canada's done here for us." Back in wars that were fought and battles that were won when they were really worth it. I was blind to that because I was so focused on winning. And on this Baja trip, I realized not only are there many different ways to try to win a bike race or win a skating race or really do anything, there's meaning behind it, far more than any medal can give. And that meaning comes in connecting. So at the end of this 6-week-long traverse of Baja, all of these things, all of these ideas, realizing and accepting that I was sick and I was going to need help if I was going to get better, that I could come back to sport and I could see what was possible, that I could do it in a better way and pursue it in a better way, not just for myself, but everyone around me. So I came back to the bike and I found a new coach from Quebec who wore his heart on his sleeve, whose brother had cracked mentally, emotionally, and never recovered after the failure at the 76 Olympics in Montreal. This coach cared so much about the humanity and the human being in his athletes that he seemed sometimes to not care that much about winning. He cared more about the mental health and stability of his athletes than any power output. And this coach taught me why I was good, how I was good, and when enough was enough, and that limitations were something to respect and something to use as a tool to be better, to know when I needed less and when I needed more. He taught me to know myself. We went to the Sydney Olympics together and I sucked. I got so sick beforehand. I got the whooping cough. I was so sick and I finished in second last place in the road race, but you know what? I finished. And the feeling of finishing that race and the pride that I had inside of myself because I had started to get help from sports psychologists because that's who was available to me for my mental health. I started to get help by treating myself differently, by putting myself in a different environment and not punishing myself day after day after day after day, by understanding my sister and her struggles and my dad and his struggles, and learning not to blame everything around me, but to work on the one thing I could work on, and that was myself, and I couldn't do it alone. So I finished that race in second last place, the most pumped Olympian other than the gold, silver, and bronze. And I knew after leaving Sydney that I had to go back to the ice because I was 27 years old and time was a ticking. Speed skating is a very technical sport, and what I did and how I went back, I still don't know how I did it. And honestly, in the Salt Lake City Olympics, I feel like I was totally faking it. Like, I look at my skating in that race, there's none of that on that video because I don't like to see it. It is so ugly. I was so strong and so determined that I gritted my way to a bronze medal. But what I remember the most of those games was the opening ceremony. And what gave me the rhythm of my skating that was to last a decade was connecting to the drum. The opening ceremony was the first time in history all of the First Nations, Native American tribes in Utah had gathered. They warred for time eternal, but they gathered in the ceremony. And in that ceremony, when I watched it, I listened and I heard for the first time the articulation of what the drum is, the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And I remember listening to Robbie Robinson sing and seeing the dancers and feeling this in my heart that has stayed with me and will stay with me till the day I die. That was my rhythm skating in that 5,000 meters. It was from the heartbeat of Mother Earth. That connection and trying to give back and trying to make it more than winning. And the healing path I was on went on for 10 years on ice. Winning gold and silver in Torino happened because I connected with those kids, because I connected with Right to Play that is based here in Toronto, that works with over 1 million children on a weekly basis around this globe, and over 80 First Nations communities in Ontario, Manitoba, and soon to be Alberta and British Columbia. It works with kids, and it reminds me of the kid that I was, not because of not having a chance like most of these kids don't have, but how sport transformed me and giving that chance. Moving to the last Olympics on ice in Vancouver, I'll never forget skating. in Canada, as Canada, for Canada. Our team, I think everybody understands, became us. Everything that we did, every race that we won, we lost, we did it with dignity. For me, it ended up being the best 5,000 meters of my life. I remember as flag bearer walking into BC Place and seeing this array of Indigenous dancers from all around Canada and their drums beating and their dance welcoming us, their jingle dresses jingling, and being reminded of that heartbeat that infused our entire team and certainly laid clear in my head and in my heart in those games. So I skated to that bronze medal, and I had 10 minutes to go back to my apartment after. 10 minutes to do my hair and my makeup because I never did my hair and makeup as a speed skater. That's why, because it would, I'm an athlete, right? So I'm like, okay. My mom was in the rink that day, and I took a couple minutes to call my dad. And over my decades in sport, there were many times I called my dad, Dad, I won the national championships, won the Olympics. Sometimes he knew I was, and sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he was too drunk. This time I called, I'm like, what it is what it is. Dad, did you see my race? I didn't win, but it was the best I ever skated. What? Who's that? It's Clara. Dad, it's Clara. Did you see? It was the Olympics. It was the 5K today. But I was out walking. And then he hung up on me. And so many times I lived that and just blamed myself, but because of the healing path I had been on with so much help, so much support, the willingness from myself to admit that weakness was strength and darkness was light and emptiness, sometimes you have to be completely empty to become full. I was able to hang up that phone and say, I love you, Dad. And I can't fix you and I can't rescue you, but I love you. The thing is, though, and because my family was so messed up, my dad wasn't drunk. He was in the middle stage of dementia and he was confused. But I didn't know that. After these games was when I realized, traveling around Canada, and so many people saying, I recognized you by your smile. As soon as you smiled, it's the red hair, but it's the smile. I realized that people just don't know because I haven't told them. And I've just shown them the good side and how easy it is and how I can suffer and take pride in the pain I can endure and the medals I won and the giving back. But where's the real humanity when you can't share your own struggle? I had the chance after the Olympics when I found out about the Let's Talk campaign through a sponsor that they were taking on mental health awareness, and I asked to be involved in any way. I'm like, I'll do anything. I didn't ask to be spokesperson of anything because I didn't think anyone would want to hear my story. I ended up being spokesperson, and I thought I'd tell this story once. And 6 years later, it doesn't resonate because it's me. It resonates because there are many people talking. It resonates because, like I said at the beginning, we connect through struggle. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this is the deep connection we make as human beings through struggle. Like I said, darkness, light, weakness, strength, beautiful emptiness, and then beautiful full. It is the human condition. It is the struggle, and it is the beautiful joy. It is the human experience that we can only share when we allow our complete selves to open up to others. And I am not saying standing in front of a TV camera and shouting out to a nation, hey, by the way, I was depressed. I'm saying going to your doctor, talking to your kid, putting that phone down and realizing that sometimes you have to listen and stop talking. We all have this ability to connect with each other. This country and this world, quite frankly, but I'm just going to speak as a Canadian, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go when it comes to
the care, the access that people deserve. That shouldn't be some kind of privilege. I see a psychologist and it's $225 an hour. I'm lucky I found someone that works for me, you know? I have the money, I pay it. Who has that kind of money? Why is it only that psychiatry is covered? Not everybody needs a psychiatrist. There are many different forms of healing, and I've experienced many of them myself, and I've heard about many of them from so many people. Yet, that word access is something that we have failed miserably at. So if I can say anything today, it's like, please understand the value of listening, the beauty of the struggle, and let your voice be heard and shout out loud until people listen, because we need to be so much better. Be your beautiful self and follow your bliss and support others, and know that everybody has a story that really needs to be told and heard. Thank you. Thank you.